A Mennonite pastor's grandson walked into Amish living rooms across Lancaster County, handed out checks promising 25% annual returns from a network of 38,000 ATMs he claimed to own, and allegedly drained $402 million from people who don't use the internet. His name was Daryl Heller, and this was the largest ATM Ponzi scheme ever charged by the federal government. $770 million flowed into his companies. 2,700 investors trusted him, and according to the SEC, the ATM network that was supposed to generate all that wealth, it earned $28.6 million over 7 years. He paid out $397 million. You do not need a finance degree to see where this is going, but to understand how Daryl Heller pulled this off, you have to understand where he came from and who he was taking from. Heller grew up on a dairy farm north of Lititz, Pennsylvania. His grandfather became pastor of Hammer Creek Mennonite Church in the late 1940s. His father followed him into the pulpit. Daryl followed neither of them. He had, as people who knew him would later say, a head for numbers and the gift of gab. 2 years out of high school, he co-founded a telecom company, cold calling businesses about long-distance phone service. He was good at selling things people didn't fully understand. That skill would define his career. By 2017, Heller had built 2 companies at the center of what he pitched as a simple, safe investment. Prestige Investment Group collected the money. Paramount Management Group allegedly deployed it into ATMs across the country. The pitch went like this: you invest, Paramount buys ATMs with your funds. Those ATMs generate transaction fees, and you get a fixed monthly distribution, 25% annual returns, like clockwork. And for a while, the checks did come like clockwork. Every single month. Now here is where affinity fraud does its ugliest work. Heller didn't run ads. He didn't cold call strangers. According to court documents, he allegedly used a network of fund managers, men with deep roots in the same Anabaptist communities he came from. Dave Zook grew up in an Amish household. Jerry Hostetter and another fund manager graduated from Lancaster Mennonite High School, the same school Heller attended. These were not strangers knocking on doors. These were neighbors, fellow churchgoers, men whose families had worshiped together for generations. And they brought the pitch to a community that relies on trust over paperwork. A community where a handshake with the right family name carries more weight than a prospectus. A community, in many cases, without internet access to Google a single claim. According to federal filings, between 50 and 100 Amish investors put money into Heller's funds. Others were affluent Mennonite business owners. Some reportedly invested their children's inheritances. Others, according to reporting by Lancaster Online, put in retirement savings they had spent decades building. Consider a 63-year-old Mennonite carpenter from eastern Lancaster County. According to court records, he reportedly invested $240,000, nearly everything he had saved across a 40-year career. He told a neighbor he chose the fund because Jerry Hostetter's family attended the same church his parents had. He has not seen a payment since April 2024. Or consider a 38-year-old Amish mother of 5 from the Grofdale Conference community. According to filings, she and her husband reportedly invested $85,000, money set aside to buy farmland for their oldest son. That money is gone. Wait, it gets worse. Wait, investigators began pulling back the curtain on Paramount's actual operations. And what they found, according to the SEC complaint, was staggering. Heller had told investors his network operated 38,000 ATMs. Internal documents reportedly showed roughly 10,000. In the third quarter of 2023 alone, investor notices claimed 27,807 machines in service. Paramount's own records allegedly reflected 17,244. Thousands of ATMs that were supposed to be generating revenue apparently did not exist. And the machines that did exist. According to the SEC, between 2020 and 2021, Paramount purchased 3,200 used ATMs for $1.9 million. That is about $527 per machine. Many were reportedly damaged. Some were inoperable. Some were sitting in a warehouse. Heller then allegedly directed 2,300 of those machines to be sold to investors through Prestige for $52 million. That is $22,600 per machine. A 4,000% markup on junk. And where did the real money go? According to the SEC, Heller allegedly misappropriated $185 million for personal use. He reportedly purchased a beachfront property in New Jersey for $5.7 million, alongside his former Paramount CEO Randall Lehman. He allegedly funneled investor funds into cannabis businesses in Michigan and Massachusetts, including a 20% stake in a company called Glorious Cannabis Company. He reportedly financed restaurants and real estate, a lifestyle built entirely on other people's savings. So how did this go undetected for 7.5 years? This is the system failure, and it is specific to affinity fraud targeting a closed community. The Amish and many conservative Mennonites do not use the internet. They do not Google investment returns. They do not check SEC filings. They rely on community trust, on the word of a man whose grandfather stood in the pulpit. When the checks arrive on time, the system appears to work. And when the checks stop, the community's first instinct is patience, not suspicion. According to court documents, Prestige's offerings were allegedly not registered with the SEC or any state regulator. The fund managers who recruited investors reportedly held no securities licenses. There was no institutional gatekeeper, no compliance officer, no audit trail that anyone outside the operation could see. The scheme reportedly unraveled in April 2024, when new investments dried up and Heller stopped making monthly distributions. He allegedly promised investors a complete buyout to return their capital. That buyout never came. For 8 months, from April to December 2024, investors waited. Some prayed. Some confronted the fund managers at church. In December 2024, the FBI raided Paramount's offices. 20 agents entered the building. They seized computers and financial records. They raided Heller Capital as well. And on September 3, 2025, FBI agents arrested Daryl Heller outside his home in Lancaster County. U.S. Attorney David Metcalf unsealed an indictment charging Heller with 1 count of securities fraud and 4 counts of wire fraud. The SEC filed a parallel civil complaint. Maximum criminal exposure, 100 years. The 4 fund managers, Zook, Hostetter, Lehman, and Joffrey, have not been criminally charged, but they face a $700 million class action lawsuit alleging they helped carry out the scheme by funneling new investor money to pay old investors. They reportedly received $52 million between them for their roles. Here is what stays with me about this case. The ATMs generated $28.6 million in actual income over 7 years. Heller paid out $397 million in distributions. That means for every dollar the machines actually earned, he paid investors nearly $14. Every single distribution check was allegedly written with someone else's principal. That is the thing about a Ponzi scheme that targets a community built on faith. The trust is not a vulnerability that gets exploited. The trust is the product. It is the only thing being sold. There were no 38,000 ATMs. There was no 25% return. There was a pastor's grandson, a handshake, and a check that arrived on time, until it didn't. The trial is expected in late 2026. 2,700 investors are watching, and in Amish living rooms across Lancaster County, families who trusted a name they had known for 3 generations are still waiting to learn how much of their savings will ever come back. Subscribe for a new case every day at The Reckoning Files.